Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Montagne, a veteran functional wellness practitioner. We expose the root cause of Lyme chronic illness. And those typically lean back to lifestyle issues, and people don't realize we choose whether we're going to build health or destroy it by the way that we live. This is an interesting talk that I shared on a forum a while ago. Thought I'd bring it over here too. So this is about how your sexual interaction, how it indicates so much about your health. So this really kind of an eye opener. So let's jump into this here. Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Montagne, veteran functional medicine wellness practitioner, where you typically get people healthy that been to multiple clinicians, never got any help anywhere. This talks about sex and your health. I was right around 40 when this event happened. I'll never forget it. Came home and my ex was just pissed. Just livid. Couldn't speak, couldn't talk, didn't want to do anything. There had been no altercations, no interactions, nothing I could figure that created this scenario. Took 3 days to get her to talk, and she finally says, "Well, you know." I said, "I know what?" Goes in the bathroom, fishes around in the garbage can, pulls out a tattered advertisement that looks like for something like Playboy. She goes, "What's this?" It looks to me like an advertisement for one of those magazines that I don't look at. So, well, why they send her to you? It's a good question. I wasn't looking. I wasn't entertaining. I wasn't on the internet. I hadn't looked at one of those magazines since I was at grade school. So, no idea. And it took me a few days of processing when I finally came to the realization, oh, I finally hit the age where men start having problems in this arena and they start to wander. And that didn't help the situation at all. Not something that she could accept, and she couldn't accept anything because the type of person she was, and that's why it's the next. But it made me realize something, that 40 should be some of the best years a man ever has. And yet, this is when men start having problems with ED, premature ejaculation. They can't perform like they used to in bed. And it's extremely emasculating situation when that goes on. And, you know, a guy's self-worth goes out the window with that. And one of the biggest drivers of self-worth and value is just slipping away. And I contrast that with the blue zones. Blue zones are places in the world where people typically live over 100, 120 is pretty common in those cultures. And the interesting thing is their sexual interaction went in the 90s for like 30-year-olds over here, 2 or 3 times a week, consistently. It makes you wonder, what's different there that are just here in the US of A? Men figure their sexual interaction peaks at 30 and this just falls off the cliff. After that, and once you hit retirement age, forget it. It's done. And that's why these smut magazines target men, because they're trying to gain their virility back in a fictitious way, and how going molesting somebody that's your daughter's age or younger can build any kind of real sense of self-worth is just kind of beyond thinking. But you have to wonder what causes all this, what's behind all of the progressive dysfunction that goes on. It comes out that the whole issue of being able to gain erections, to be able to have any lasting power, not have premature ejaculations, it was due to hormones and a lot of physiology that's going on inside of your body. So I'll explain how all that works, and then it makes sense. First, an eye-opening fact is a man's sexual organs are the same as a woman's. And you might think, oh, you're nuts. No. During development of the fetus inside of the womb, there's no way to tell the difference of a sex by physical view or examination up to about 7 weeks after conception. If it's going to be a male, there's a if it is a male, there's a small shot of testosterone that makes the ovaries grab the round ligament that holds on one's reproductive system in place. Those ovaries drop down through the anal canal into the labia. The labia become the scrotum. The ovaries become the testicles. The round ligament becomes a spermatic cord. The uterus drops down, wraps around the base of the urethra, it becomes a prostate. And the 3 erectile tissues, there's one in each of the major labia, one clitoris, and a female wrapped together, wrap around the urethra, elongates, becomes his penis. So we're the same. And whatever feels good to you, she's got a counterpart feels good to her. And likewise, the opposite goes with that. So the way we make our sexual hormones is the same in both men and women. Most of that actually occurs outside of the gonads, outside of the testicles and the ovaries. Most of it's in the peripheral tissues, both men and women. And once women hit menopause, it's all in the peripheral tissues. 50-50 before that time. The way the sexual hormones are made, pregnenolone and DHEA come out of the adrenal glands. Those are the precursors to the sexual hormones. Those get converted first to progesterone. Progesterone converts to testosterone. Testosterone converts to estrogen in different quantities in men and women, but that's the progression. And what commonly starts to happen in the 40s, men have been doing all their battles, trying to gain in financial arenas, business arenas, investment arenas, trying to make some kind of a stake in life so that he can lie down, relax more in his older age. But all the stress of living the way that we live over here, it starts to beat up the adrenal glands. And stress comes in every variety you can think of. There's chemical stresses, hormonal stresses, relational stresses, financial stresses, physical stresses, gravitational stresses, electrical stresses, and on and on and on it goes. But the body doesn't separate those. It adds them all together collectively. And once the limit of what you can handle is the adrenal glands kick in, trying to pump out cortisol and adrenaline to deal with the stress. And essentially that was set up so that we could defend our lives from life-threatening situations. But the life-threatening situation is just a perceived issue now, not the actual thing of having to defend yourself from bears and tigers in most instances. So when the adrenals start pumping out excessive amounts, especially for a long time, of cortisol and adrenaline, they run out of the things to make it. So they steal the pregnenolone and DHEA to make cortisol and adrenaline, and there's nothing left to make the sexual hormones. So without the sexual hormones, you start to see atrophy of sexual tissues. And this is really apparent in women. The issue of ED is a lot bigger factor in women than it is in men. It's just not talked about. It's not addressed because they can still engage sexually. But an attentive man realizes that she has a a lot harder time having a climax. It takes a lot more attentive care to make sure that she gets there. So that's more extended foreplay and a lot of playing, a lot of caressing, a lot of teasing, which, by the way, women will rather connect to your soul than they would have an orgasm. But if you connect to their soul, they're going to get both if you're really attentive. And that really should be a man's goal. So you start to see atrophy in the sexual tissues. Men's penile size will decrease if it's really bad. Men on steroids, they all know their testicles shrink down, can be the size of a pea. Bulked down muscles, but no sexual function. In women, they start to lose fullness in their breasts as that happens, and you'll notice the first half of their cycle, their breasts are fuller than the second half. That's because of the hormones. Labia are less full. Second half of the cycle, and when that becomes a chronic issue, they start to atrophy. And I found this out through a marketing website I was sent to on a plastic surgeon who was doing labial lifts. It took me a lot of mental gyration to figure out what's going on, but this is the root of what's going on with all that. So it takes nitric oxide to engorge all the rectal tissues. That's the nipples, that's the breast, that's the labia, that's the clitoris, that's the penis. It's all the rectal tissues we have. It takes the same mechanism. It takes a lot of healthy sexual hormones down to tissues to the point where they can fill with blood and engorge and the valves shut off to keep that. And nitric oxide is the one that actually controls that valve and the filling. But the chronic stress with the chronic inflammatory issues eats up all the nitric oxide. The same thing that's stealing the pregnant DHEA in the adrenals is eating up the nitric oxide inside the body so that erections are not complete, they're not full, they're not as hard, they're not as long lasting, and you may be able to initiate, but oftentimes can't finish. And all of the dysfunctional interactions that go on, they really wreck a man's self-worth and value. And it's really, really a huge relational stress. So we see a common driving factor in all of this is chronic stress. And that chronic stress shows up with its hormonal dysregulation in the adrenal gland, which are one of the critical factors that control the entire hormonal regulation system. There's other things that go on with this. We'll talk in my next talk. But the things that set the stage for all this is lifestyle issues. So other than, well, this is even included in the hormonal issue, is the fact that stress is one of the biggest causes of ED and sexual dysfunction. And the one stress that they don't talk about is relational stress. If there's kind of unresolved conflict with your mate, with your spouse, it's going to kill this whole arena. And it's not always a man's fault that that's there. If you ever tried counseling, the bulk of counseling always points the finger at the man and blames him. It's all your fault, because that's the position God put us in, is we're leaders and we're the ones that take responsibility. But in most relationships, it's not 50-50. One carries the other. A healthy relationship, that oscillates back and forth between the man and the woman. In an unhealthy relationship, it's always carried primarily by one, either the man or the woman. And that's just one of the realities of dysfunctional relationships. Guys don't have a means to discuss that. A minister friend of mine who was into family ministry said that only 2% of men actually have the ability to escape and break the bonds of an abusive, manipulative, narcissistic life. That's not very good. Women are at least 2.5 times that, at least 5% of them, but there's more of a out society-wise for women than there is for men. So that's a huge issue. Things that set all this stage up is gut health, and with gut health, that's food. There's a bunch of foods that are really, really critical to know and understand. We have all kinds of herbicides and pesticides in our food supply. And we're just getting regular food. It's not clean, it's not organic, not from the farmer's market. It's really, really important to know that there's a huge amount of hormonal changing herbicides and pesticides in the food we have. Atrazine is one of the biggest ones. Everybody knows about Roundup. Atrazine's like Roundup on steroids. It's commonly used in golf courses. It's used in almost all the corn that's grown out there. In the runoff in the ponds by the fields and places where it's used, where water collects, and you typically see tadpoles and frogs, it will make male frogs, male fish too, grow female reproductive organs along with their male reproductive organs. The frogs can produce eggs that are fertilizable, turn into tadpoles. It's highly mutagenic, highly cancerous, and it completely destroys a male's ability to produce testosterone. Hoppy beer is another one that will do that. Hops is a major estrogenic compound, and people like IPAs, they may think it's a macho male thing to do. IPAs weren't traditionally made the way they are now. They weren't bitter like they are now. They were just flavorful. Got a long history of brewing science under my belt and was close to starting my own microbrewery when I was 20. So I know a lot about beer, and this is just one huge fact. It's one way where you can help a woman supplement her estrogens is with hops. So that's a big one. Receipt paper is one of the most estrogenic, toxic products out there. And if you handle receipts from shopping, they're heat-laden, they might be BPA free, but they got some other PA on there that's at least A through N. I think it goes farther than that. And the other ones may be more toxic. That's like a 17-fold increase in absorption through the skin if your fingers are wet. So if you stick in your teeth to hold it, you're just getting full of estrogen. So those are some of the simple factors that do it. A healthy dietary lifestyle is really critical to keep everything well and healthy. I've got a little book. It's called Healing Lifestyles. It's on a website, givewell.net. Thing I'll do is leave your email on there, and that book tells you a bunch of tricks you can do with your lifestyle to really change your destiny. The way you live changes the way your genes express themselves. Every gene has 30,000 potential ways to express itself, and you can change that by the way you live. You can have a bad gene and a good lifestyle, and you'll have the good gene characteristics shown. You can have a good gene and a bad lifestyle, and you'll have all the poor characteristics show up. So these are really key issues. I got a whole bunch of other things in that book that are simple things that you can do to really change your destiny and change your situation right now. So drinking or eating lots of beets for the nitric oxide increase with all the arginine, the sugar in those it can create a diabetic situation. The sugars are so high. Beets are really, really high in sugars. That really doesn't work all that well. And we've tried every kind of hormonal adaptogen thing that's out there, and they don't work. And only doing health for 4 decades now. So I know we came up with one of our own tinctures that works really well, but we don't have a big supply of that. And everything is dependent on fixing your lifestyle. So pick that book up if you can't remember what it is. Give me a shout out on the comments, and I'll send you a copy. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye. I want to thank you for listening. This is an interesting way to tie a bunch of subjects together with more of an eye-catching title with something like this, but it's amazing how revealing our struggles in this area tell us the things about health. And these are fairly easy to resolve. They're all lifestyle issues. They create all these problems. His lifestyle is going to change those. So if you're really interested in trying to resolve those, reach out, get a hold of us. Let's do a consult and see how you can get your life back in order to. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.